Welcome to a special edition of the Gulf Coast Growth Show. My name is Chad Burke. I'm president here at the Economic Alliance Houston Port Region. And with me today is Glen Hayes from ExxonMobil. Official title, Integrated Complex Manager, ExxonMobil Baytown, and Vice Chair here at the Economic Alliance on our executive board. So first year, I guess, coming into that position. So I thought it'd be great to sit down with Glen, introduce everybody to him, talk about the phenomenal work that they do over at ExxonMobil and Baytown, and just get to know a little bit about the man, but then also about all the work that y'all do there and what the products are that come out and everything. So welcome. It's good to have you here.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
So a little bit of background on yourself. I know you're from Alabama, right? So give us the backstory, family, hometown, schools, hobbies. Tell us a little bit about Glen.
So grew up in Alabama, as you mentioned. Both my parents were teachers, believe it or not. So my mom was a math teacher. She was the head of the math department in my high school. My dad was an administrator. So it made for an interesting year as a freshman in high school. When your dad's your principal, it kind of can create some interesting dynamics. But really found a love for engineering, tinkering in my grandfather's shop. So he had a motorcycle parts business that he ran out of his backyard. I fell in love with engineering, and that ultimately took me to the University of Alabama, where I got my mechanical engineering degree.
Excellent. So you had the math part from your mother, and then the actual hands-on mechanical part from was your grandfather? Is that what you said? Yeah, that's outstanding. Yeah.
So went to school in Alabama. That was kind of home for me. And then around my sophomore year of college, I landed at a little place called Hunt Refining Company. There was a little small independent refinery that was right down the banks of the Black Warrior River from the university. And so this industry, this is kind of what I've done since I was 18 years old. It started as a summer internship and ultimately turned into year-round employment. Met my wife there. Her father's an operator at that facility.
At that Hunt facility?
He is.
Okay.
So that's kind of where all the roads kind of converged for me, and ultimately led to career opportunities with ExxonMobil when I graduated. So I had a lot of fairly significant major life events with college graduation, getting married, and ultimately relocating to Beaumont to start my career with ExxonMobil back in 2002.
And y'all have children that I think you and I have chatted about before. I think we've got some in common there. But go ahead and tell us a little bit about the family. 2 kids,
2 teenagers. So my daughter's 16 and a 13-year-old son. They tend to dominate my time away from work, as probably the case for you and many other parents. So if I'm away from work, my friends would know that I enjoy doing outdoor activities, and if there's not time for that, I'm watching kids sports. That could be equestrian sports for my daughter or soccer for my son, but that tends to dominate our time, and it's something that we're both very proud of as parents and happy to see them grow up.
Excellent, good deal. So you mentioned kind of the beginning of the career. Tell us, you started, I guess, in Beaumont, right? So what's the progression from Beaumont through, and then now brought you to Baytown?
Yeah, I'll go back further. My wife and I both kind of grew up in families that had the same hometown from being born ultimately to graduating high school. So having a career that involves a significant amount of relocation was not something we envisioned. It's just kind of something that happened. So we started in Beaumont, as I mentioned, in 2002. And from a career standpoint, a lot of early career engineering, early supervision, kind of learning the business, learning how we do things within our assets, but also how our assets connect to industry as a whole, as well as the markets in which we serve. And then, early 2010s, we had our first relocation. We went up to the D.C. area and sat on the trading floor for a couple of years and learning how the molecules that we produce in our Texas assets specifically end up around the world and how we capture the most value from them as a corporation.
That had to be fascinating.
It was extremely informative. Yeah, to see how it all stitches together between, a barrel of gasoline that may land at a branded station. So think of an Exxon down the street for you, or land at an unbranded wholesaler, or even get shipped internationally to wherever else in the world the demand centers were, and there's value to be captured.
Yeah.
And then the pace of relocations and kind of expansion of manufacturing and operational experience picked up. Had my first pleasure to come to Baytown around 2013. I spent 4 or 5 years here doing both operations and mechanical stuff. And then we went to the Chicago area for a few years, went to Canada for a few years after that, and then had the pleasure of coming back to Houston in my first international role. So I had a team that looked at developing projects, very much what you and your organization do. Where do we want to invest? Why do we choose certain places to invest versus others? And that group was an international global team. So I got to experience many different cultures and a lot of travel that I hadn't done before.
Was that based out of the Spring office?
It was. Yeah. It was. And then pleasure to come back to Baytown September, about 2.5 years ago. So came back as a chemical plant manager and then have stepped from that into the refinery manager, now what we operate as an integrated complex.
Yeah. Okay, so the great segue there. So explain that integrated. What does that really mean? The integrated complex. You've got a couple of different things with refining and chemicals going on there.
So my guess is much of your audience probably knows ExxonMobil and Baytown from their history and would have known us as operating a refinery, a chemical plant, and an olefins plant.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of three independent manufacturing assets. And over the many years, as we work to capture the scale of our operations, we've worked to bring things together. And it started with behaviors and it builds into bringing systems together. And ultimately, in kind of August, September timeframe of last year, we brought together the leadership team across what would have historically been the refinery and the chemical plant. So there's one team that runs that asset as one, and we call it an integrated complex.
And that's you, basically.
That's my team, and that's what we do.
Good. So just recently, y'all had a groundbreaking, I think, for the refinery reconfiguration. And before we started the conversation, you were showing me some really fantastic pictures of some vessels or the big vessel coming up. Tell us what that means to go through a refinery reconfiguration there in Baytown.
So if you think about ExxonMobil in Baytown, we've been operating here for over 100 years. And every year as a corporation, we spend time looking at the demands of today and what do we see happening over the next 100 years. And no different than you can experience, the demands for our product slates are changing over time. And if you look at the continued electrification of vehicle fleets, gasoline demand potentially declining over time, there's many other sectors that are more difficult to decarbonize, and we see those runways and those demands staying stronger for longer periods of time. So this is expressly an investment in the future of our facility. So if you think about the refinery we operate today, it was designed and built and optimized over decades to match a product slate of the past. We're reconfiguring 3 operational units within our facility to ultimately make less gasoline and in turn make more distillates. So think diesel, jet fuel, and also make some higher quality lube stock. So we'll make a Group 3 lube stock that lands in some of the higher quality lubricants that today's modern engines require.
That brings up a really good point. And I want to kind of dive into that. We've talked a little bit before, and obviously at the Economic Alliance, one of our biggest initiatives for this region is freight and how we move freight, how efficiently we are, freight capacity, our Highway 225, our interchanges, all of those things. Talk a little bit about kind of y'all's forecast that you mentioned as for freight traffic for those diesel engines, heavy trucking, even marine, ag, that all kind of rely on diesel that may not be as easy to convert to new and different alternative fuels. What does that look like in from Exxon's view?
So I'd actually encourage all your listeners. The report I mentioned we call the Energy Outlook. It's something that we issue publicly every year. So anyone can go to ExxonMobil.com, go to our Investor Relations Center, and actually see by demand sector what we forecast the future of industry to look like. And that's what also informs our investment decisions. So those sectors you just laid out could be heavy trucking, marine transportation, you hit construction and agriculture. The other one I would add is aviation. As well. Those, if you look at the energy per kind of pound of fuel, those sectors are very harder to decarbonize and harder to electrify through batteries.
I don't know because of the
demand, the pretty intense operations,
right?
And you also think about the global economy and global world. There's a lot of shipping traffic. There's a lot of transit that's happening around the globe. So it just has a long runway, and it's consistent with what we expect the demand centers to be.
Very good.
It's ultimately the driver for the investment that we're making.
Yeah, and I will. So the Energy Outlook on the website, that's something that I think everybody probably ought to take a peek at. I want to back up to a couple of quick things. One, y'all said you'd ExxonMobil and their predecessors basically have been there for over 100 years in Baytown.
We have.
Side note, my grandfather moved down from East Texas and to get work, and in the mid 50s, and at Humble Oil, that refinery was where he went to work. So I used to see him come home every day with the silver hat, with the hard hat, with the rim around it, and the blue coveralls and everything. And then just for kind of the audience's perspective, if you go to Google Maps and you look at kind of the greater Houston area and you see the footprint of that complex, you can put 3 downtown Houstons inside that complex. It's so large. It's a lot of people don't realize kind of the scale of what's happening out there, but it's a huge facility.
No, that's a great segue. I'll start with your comment about your family heritage. That's a dynamic that's not lost on us. There's a ton of our employees that have multiple generations of lineage. It could be there's specific families I could point to have brothers and grandfathers and fathers and siblings across the board that have all spent many careers out there. So I think there's a lot of connection to what we do. There's a lot of pride in our workforce, and that's something we work every day to continue to build upon and grow for the future. But to answer your question, it is a large facility. We operate on over 3,400 acres of real estate. Another fun fact for you is we have enough piping within our facility to stretch coast to coast across the U.S. So it's a significant operation. Ultimately, we talked about the 3 heritage plants, but if you bring it all together, you have a world-scale refinery that's just shy of 600,000 barrels a day of capacity. And then you also have a world-scale chemical plant and olefins plant that are tacked on the side of it. You put it all together, it's one of, if not the largest integrated petrochemical complex in the Western Hemisphere, and probably one of the largest ones in the globe. So it is a significant asset and one that's obviously important to our portfolio, and I think ultimately very important to the Houston region as well.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Side question. So y'all are making. You've got 3 different kind of facilities there: the refinery, the chemical, and the olefins. Tell us a little bit about the feedstocks that supply these 3 facilities, and then we'll talk a little bit about. We've talked some about the refining, but then we'll talk a little bit about the other products that come out. So I know because I've worked with folks for a while there at your marine side, your dock side on kind of dredging. We're always trying to get dredging permits annually, just kind of sweep out the docks, if you will. So I know you're bringing crude in all the time, but then where's that crude from? And then what are the other feedstocks that are kind of feeding the facility?
Yeah, and this is a question, actually, the answer to which has changed over time. If you would have asked my predecessors this question 10 years ago, the vast majority of our feedstocks would have been internationally sourced long-haul crudes. Yep. And with the shale revolution in the U.S. and the fracking plays in West Texas and New Mexico, et cetera, our crude diet is largely a domestic crude diet today.
Yeah.
So there's less international crude traffic on our docks, and in turn, there's more international exports of products on our docks.
Yeah.
So whereas in the past you may have had a crude cargo coming in, now there's a diesel cargo that could be heading to Africa or Europe or anywhere else in the globe. As we kind of expand the markets in which we play.
That domestic crude pipeline in?
Is pipeline in.
Yeah.
So ExxonMobil just completed a fairly significant investment a couple of years ago, year and a half ago. We've connected with some third-party industry partners our fracking assets in West Texas to our refining assets in Baytown and Beaumont.
That's just, that's when the shale revolution happened, that was the picture that we could all see happening, right? Then we would less imports of foreign crude and more use of kind of our
and that's exactly how it's played out.
Yeah.
And so if you think about feedstocks more broadly and don't think just about the refinery, but you also think about the olefins plant, it's a similar dynamic to where predominantly ethane feed that's coming from West Texas. So the advantage that the Gulf Coast and Houston specifically has is we have access to significant amounts of feed advantages as well as energy cost advantages because of our natural gas prices.
Exactly.
And that's what has helped fuel the growth that you've seen in this region.
Yep. Couldn't have said it better myself. But yeah, it's not only energy, but it's feedstock as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is.
Very good. All right. Tell us a little about it. We talked a little bit about kind of the reconfiguration. Are there any other upcoming projects, turnarounds that you kind of guys you're looking at over the next year or two?
Yeah, you can imagine with a facility of our size, there's always something
right?
And so it never really stops. We've got 100 years of history of investment. That's not going to slow down anytime soon. From a turnaround standpoint, we're actually getting close, if not almost finished, wrapping up our peak season for the year. But from an investment standpoint, if I take a step back, one thing we haven't talked about is advanced recycling. So we just finished starting up our 3rd advanced recycling unit a few months ago, and the construction of the 4th unit is actively underway as well. So that's a space that we're exceptionally proud of what we're doing. And we sit here today, there's roughly 150 million pounds of plastic that we've been able to process through our facility that would have otherwise likely ended up in incineration or landfill. Yep. So that project's progressing pretty well. The olefins team and Kim's team continues to see expansion and investment, capturing those feed advantages that you talked about. And independently, we have a fairly large research and engineering facility in Baytown.
Yep.
And ExxonMobil is actively working to consolidate our lab facilities that used to exist across North America in Clinton, New Jersey, and Sarnia, Ontario. Mm-hmm. We're centralizing those organizations of research as well as pilot plants between our Houston campus and our Baytown facilities as well. So there's active construction happening to bring that competency and capability to this area, as well as expansions that multiple of our facilities as well. And we've got a base capital portfolio that continues
Yeah.
to progress as well.
Yeah, that's neat that you're consolidating the R&D. Our former chairman, Bob Bradshaw, Rob Bacon, ran R&D for a while. Bob was also a former chairman, then Rob. But Rob, for when he came on, he was in charge of that R&D, and then I think they sent him up to Spring to do some of the other stuff that you had actually done in your career too, as well, as far as kind of looking at future.
Rob sits in the Ventures organization, which is a group that we task with evaluating investment opportunities and choosing where we'll deploy the corporation's capital.
You had also mentioned kind of the evolution and growth of the recycling. We highlighted that at one of our events this last year, and good partnership that y'all have got with folks like Chambers County and Mont Belvieu and Talkie and some of the groups that are kind of really working together to collect that feedstock, if you will, for that facility. What do we need to do as a region, a state, to better lean into that collection part of it, so that we can really supply you with good quantities?
It's a great question, because I'll take a step back for your viewers when we talk about advanced recycling, just to kind of quantify what we're talking about.
Definitely, yeah.
If you take your plastic bottle from this morning,
right,
that's something that's the average citizen understands can be recycled, and there's a long history of mechanically recycling that. Mm-hmm. That's not the plastic molecules that we're targeting.
And mechanically recycling, because when we got into this, that was kind of the first time I'd heard that. That's just literally, shredding stuff up and melting it and putting it back into something, basically.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And what we're doing is we're taking plastics that are more difficult to recycle. So think the bubble wrap package that your Amazon delivery came in, the wrapper from your protein bar this morning, the AstroTurf field that your kids may play on.
Yeah.
Those things can't be mechanically recycled. So historically, that's why they landed in incineration or landfill. Mm-hmm. So we're looking for kind of harder to recycle materials, and we're taking those through a process that we've deployed in Baytown, and ultimately converting them back to their basic ingredients through our existing assets and some infrastructure that we built on top of that.
Down to the molecular level.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. And you're right. A fair bit of that challenge is building the superstructure to ensure to get aggregation mm-hmm. and supply chain set up to get it back to us. When we're done with our fourth asset, we'll have process capacity for almost 250 million pounds of plastic a year. So the supply chain aspects is why you've seen us enter into partnerships with Chambers County, the City of Houston, and a few other places to help build that supply chain. So I think within the U.S., continuing to build a habit and an understanding of what recycling is, and then how it can expand beyond the historical heritage of you're going to put stuff in a specific bin. We're expanding that envelope quite a bit. So we're going to have to continue to kind of march down the path.
Yeah, the awareness of what can be done now through the technology that you guys are deploying. So
absolutely, it's going to take some time, and we're actively working and playing that space pretty significantly.
Yeah, and we're working. I know that over the years, the last few years specifically, we've worked with our partners at the Texas Chemistry Council out of Austin to try and kind of legislatively create that stream of feedstock to kind of really take advantage of the technology and the facilities that y'all have. So
yeah, we've had quite a few legislators and staffers have come out to kind of see what we're doing. Mm-hmm. Your organization and staff have been very helpful in that as well, and I know they've come out also too.
Very good, very good. Well, I think that tells the story of what's going on out there. Like I said before, very happy to have you on our executive board. The role that ExxonMobil plays, and just kind of the quality of people, just from a personal side, that ExxonMobil always has in the region, in kind of leading in the region, has always been a real blessing to us at the Economic Alliance. It means a lot when y'all are active in leading the region to be better in everything that we do. And your role on our executive board and your predecessors and folks like Rebecca and Connie before her have just been fantastic for us to be able to work with. So I'm glad to share you with our audience and let them get to know you a little better. I'll after we air this, I'll post your cell phone number up on the bottom, so we'll just let everybody just give you a call. No, we may not do that. Keep Glenn at work. But appreciate it. Appreciate your time. Any final comments?
Look, thank you for the invite to help serve on the board for the Economic Alliance. So thanks for the invite for today. I mean, obviously, with ExxonMobil, we're pretty proud of the legacy we have in
Yeah.
Baytown, and we're proud of the legacy that we're building for the future. But I'd be remiss to say that we also understand that we play in a much broader ecosystem in the Houston Ship Channel, and we couldn't be successful without all the other industry partners that help us
Yeah.
every day, and the employees at the port, and our pilots, and everybody else that's out there to help deliver and enable our success day in, day out. So we got a proud workforce.
Yep.
I'm proud of our role that we play in the community, but we couldn't do it alone.
Well, and that's the attitude I just spoke about. So that's fantastic, and that's how so many of our organizations and partners in the regions are. It's a great place to work together, and we've got it's a roll your sleeves up kind of culture
Yes.
that we have out here, and that's why I really enjoy being out here. It's great to have you on board, and good to let everybody get to know you a little bit.
Thanks again, Chad.
Well, with that, we'll wrap up this edition of the Gulf Coast Growth Show. We'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.